You're in a meeting when someone shares good news about their promotion, and something catches in your chest. Your eyes start to sting. You feel that familiar pressure building behind your face. You're not sad. You're genuinely happy for them. But your body doesn't seem to understand the difference. So you do what you've learned to do. You blink rapidly. You look down at your notes. You take a sip of water and hope no one notices. Because crying at someone else's success feels absurd, embarrassing, like proof that something is fundamentally wrong with the way you process the world. And maybe this happens more often than you'd like to admit. At weddings, during heartfelt speeches, when a coworker mentions they're struggling, when someone shows you unexpected kindness. Your throat tightens, your vision blurs, and you're left wondering why you can't just experience emotion like everyone else seems to. Quietly, privately, under control. People often assume that those who cry easily are unstable, too emotional, unable to handle the pressures of real life. But that's not the full truth. Sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes they cry, not because they're fragile, but because they're profoundly connected to the emotional reality of every moment. Research from McLean Hospital and Harvard Medical School found that people who cry more frequently have higher levels of emotional awareness. Their brains process emotional stimuli with greater depth and nuance than the average person. They don't just observe emotion, they embody it. What if your tears aren't evidence of instability? What if they're evidence of extraordinary emotional perception? When you cry easily, something happens that most people don't see. Your nervous system treats emotional information as urgent data, critical intelligence that demands immediate processing. It's not that the emotion is too big, it's that your system responds to feeling the way others respond to alarm bells. Your heart rate shifts, your breathing changes, your tear ducts activate, not because you're choosing it, but because your body has decided this moment contains truth worth honouring. You feel the vulnerability in someone's voice when they share something personal. The courage it took for them to speak, the risk of being seen, and your body responds to that bravery with tears. Because for you, emotion isn't decorative. It's not background texture to ignore while focusing on what really matters. For you, emotion is what really matters. This doesn't happen overnight. It starts when you're young, when feelings are too large for your small body and the world hasn't taught you yet that some things shouldn't be felt so deeply. Maybe you cried when your teacher praised you in front of the class, when you watched your parent look tired after a long day, when you saw an elderly person eating alone at a restaurant, things that other children barely noticed, things that shouldn't have mattered so much, but they did matter. To you, they always mattered, and maybe adults responded with confusion. "Why are you crying?" they'd ask, as if your tears required logical justification, as if emotion was supposed to follow rules you'd never been taught. Some told you to toughen up, to stop being so sensitive, to save your tears for real problems. But here's what they didn't understand. You weren't crying because you thought everything was a crisis. You were crying because you could feel the emotional weight of moments that others walked right past. Over time, this taught you something painful, that your depth of feeling made you different, that your tears were evidence you hadn't learned to be properly human yet. And even now, decades later, when you cry at a colleague's promotion or a stranger's kindness, there's still that voice whispering, "What's wrong with you?" Here's what neuroscientists discovered about emotional sensitivity. Dr. Elaine Aron's research found that approximately 15 to 20% of people have what's called a highly sensitive nervous system. Their brains process sensory and emotional information more thoroughly than others. Brain imaging studies show that when highly sensitive people view emotional images, their brains show increased activity in areas associated with empathy, awareness, and deep processing. This isn't dysfunction, it's a different neurological architecture, because the human brain evolved in small groups where survival depended on reading emotional signals. detecting subtle shifts in mood, sensing when someone was in distress before they asked for help, feeling when danger approached through changes in group energy. Your ancestors, who could perceive these invisible signals, kept their communities safe. They were the early warning system, the emotional scouts. Your tears aren't weakness. They're ancient wiring designed to connect you deeply to the emotional landscape around you. We live in a world that treats emotional control as a professional requirement. Your ancestors cried openly when they grieved, when they reunited after separation, when they witnessed injustice or breathtaking beauty. Tears were normal, expected, part of being human. You have that same nervous system, those same tear ducts, that same need to release what you feel. But you live in a culture that's declared war on visible emotion. Corporate environments reward composure. Social media celebrates highlight reels without the mess. Everyone around you seems to navigate life without leaking their feelings all over every moment. So you learn to hold it in, to swallow what wants to rise, to excuse yourself to bathroom stalls and parked cars where no one can witness what your body needs to do. Because crying in public feels like exposure, like revealing you haven't mastered the basic skill of being unbothered. But here's where it gets interesting. The effort of constantly suppressing your natural emotional responses doesn't make you stronger, it makes you exhausted. There's a particular kind of loneliness in being the person who feels everything while pretending to feel nothing. People see your composure, they think you're handling things well. They might even admire your professionalism, your ability to stay calm, but they don't see the cost. They don't see you biting the inside of your cheek during presentations, digging your fingernails into your palms during emotional conversations, holding your breath when someone shares something vulnerable, because if you breathe normally, the tears will come. They don't see you finally alone in your car, crying so hard you can barely see the steering wheel. Not because you were sad all day, but because you've been holding back what your body needed to release for hours. Behind every held-back tear is enormous effort, not weakness, constant vigilance, not overreaction, overperception combined with forced suppression. And there's something else people don't talk about. A quiet resentment that builds when you're told your tears are too much, when what you're actually experiencing is that the world makes too little space for them. Not anger at others. Frustration with yourself for not being able to just be normal, to just not care so much. There's something that shifts when you stop treating your tears as a problem to solve, when you stop apologizing every time your eyes well up. Stop saying, "I don't know why I'm crying," as if emotion requires a defense attorney. Maybe your tears don't need justification. Maybe they need permission. Because here's what research shows. Crying serves a biological function. It releases stress hormones. It activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which calms you down. It literally changes your body's chemistry in ways that verbal processing alone cannot. Your tears aren't malfunction. They're medicine. And people who cry easily often possess something others have lost: the ability to be moved, to feel the full weight of being alive, to notice beauty and pain without numbing or intellectualizing it away. You don't experience life on the surface. You experience it in full color, full volume, full intensity. The people who cry easily often make the best friends, not despite their tears, because of them. They notice when you're struggling before you say a word. They feel your joy as if it's their own. They cry at your wedding, not because they're dramatic, but because they can feel the magnitude of what's happening. The courage love requires, the beauty of two people choosing each other. This isn't weakness, it's emotional literacy. And yes, it means you'll cry during speeches, during goodbye hugs, during moments of unexpected tenderness that catch you off guard. But it also means you'll feel gratitude more deeply, connection more fully, presence more completely. You're not broken for crying when someone gets promoted. You're awake to the vulnerability and courage that achievement required. You're honoring their journey in the only way your body knows how. Maybe crying easily isn't something to fix. Maybe it's something to understand. Not as fragility, but as a way of being fully present to what's real. Because in a culture that encourages emotional numbing, your tears are an act of resistance. They insist that things matter, that moments carry weight, that being human means feeling, not just thinking. When everyone around you has learned to minimize, your tears maximize. They say, this is important, this person is important, this moment deserves to be felt. There's a concept in psychology called emotional granularity. It's the ability to experience and identify emotions with specificity and nuance. People who cry easily often have high emotional granularity. They don't just feel bad or good, they feel the specific texture of each emotional moment, the bittersweet, the tender, the achingly beautiful. And sometimes those complex emotions are so rich, so multifaceted, that tears are the only response large enough to match them. Your tears aren't simple, they're sophisticated. They're your body's way of saying, I'm experiencing something my words cannot capture. So when you're in that meeting and tears spring to your eyes because someone shared good news, please understand this. You're not unstable. You're not too emotional. You're not failing at being professional. You're succeeding at being human. There will still be moments when you wish you could turn it off. When you envy people who seem untouched by the emotional currents constantly moving through you, that's okay. That's not failure. That's being a person who feels deeply in a world that often feels shallow. But there will also come a day when you're with someone who starts to tear up, and instead of looking away in embarrassment, you simply hand them a tissue and say, "Me too." And in that moment, you'll realize something profound. Your tears were never the problem. They were always the bridge, the thing that let other people know it was safe to feel, that being moved isn't weakness, that caring deeply is the most courageous thing a person can do. Maybe that's the truest kind of strength there is. Not the ability to stay unmoved, but the courage to be moved and let it show. Not emotional control at all costs. Emotional authenticity. Not pretending moments don't matter. Honoring that they do. So when those tears come, whether you're alone or surrounded by people, whether it makes sense or doesn't, whether anyone understands or they look at you confused, let them fall. You're not too sensitive for this world. You're sensitive enough to remind the rest of us what being alive actually feels like. Not emptiness, fullness, not weakness, humanity, not too much. Exactly right. Until then, walk gently with yourself. You're not broken. You're awake. And that's a gift.